Buenas tardes, compañeros de clase. Good afternoon, classmates. My name is Jeannie Porrata, and I am a teacher, a Spanish teacher at Papillon La Vista South High School. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, soy puertorriqueña. I was born in New York City, but at the age of 5, my parents moved back to Puerto Rico. So I went to school in Puerto Rico. I went to college in Puerto Rico. I graduated from University of Puerto Rico with a music education degree. I married my husband soon after college, and we moved to the States for him to start his career as an Air Force officer. So we have moved. We have lived in different states. We lived overseas. So we have moved around. We have raised 5 children. They're all adult. And in that journey, I decided to go back to school to get my teaching certification to teach Spanish. So we were living in Florida. We're living in Northwest Florida. And I went back to college to an alternative program to get my Spanish teaching certification. Soon after that, in 2007, I was hired to teach at a high school close to where we lived, Crestview High School. And I taught there for 11 years. I taught Spanish 1 and 2 and honors Spanish. So during those years, I just fell in love with teaching all over again, and especially teaching Spanish. So while I was teaching there, we did have a good population of Hispanics, not as large as South Florida, but we did have students, especially because we were close to a military base. So we had a lot of students that came from families that were Hispanic. We did not call them heritage learners, right? Those that were pretty fluent, we called them native speakers at that time. And then those that were not very fluent, but identify themselves as Hispanic, we just used to refer to them as students of Hispanic descent. My own 5 children, right? I never really thought about them as heritage speakers or heritage learners, even though among them there's kind of a variety. Some of them are a little bit more fluent than others in Spanish, some not at all. But we did raise them with very strong cultural ties to Puerto Rico. Their grandparents visited often. We visited often. There's always music and food and celebrations that exposed them to our culture. So they grew up really loving their culture, identifying as Puerto Ricans. And again, their language skills, some of them are a little bit more, I speak a little more fluently than others. So it wasn't until we moved to Nebraska in 2018, and I was subbing at a high school here, Papillon La Vista High School, that I was introduced to the term heritage learners because the teacher had a class of heritage learners. So I was fascinated, very interested in it. And it was a mixed group of students in the sense that there were some that Spanish was their first language, so they were very comfortable with the language, even more so than speaking English. And then there were some that were more comfortable speaking English, but had some knowledge of the language and had a good understanding, especially of vocabulary. And then there was a group in between, right, that were either bilingual or pretty comfortable with the language, even though they were not fluent. So that's where my journey and my interest on this group of students started. In 2019, I was hired at Papillon La Vista South to teach Spanish. And I did approach our department head and ask the question, why don't we offer heritage learners a class? And if we ever do, that's something that I really will be interested on teaching. So I'm excited about this class, about, understanding this particular group of students. I was a bit surprised that there is kind of a uh, not a very clear consensus as to who's considered a heritage learner and who is not. And I can understand that now that when I subbed that group of students, there was a big variety as far as their knowledge of the language. So I can see how in a class like this you do have a variety of students as far as fluency and their ability to communicate in the language. I remember that particular day we were actually reading a novel and we had some really good conversations in Spanish. So the idea of being able to use my language, my heritage language with them is always fascinating. So yes, so I'm excited just to be in this class to see how I can help this group of students. Even if we don't have a class, we do have heritage learners in our Spanish classes all the time. And that's a group of students that's very close to my heart. So I always try to um, to get to know them, to understand their background, to encourage them in any way I can, to challenge them, to become, you know, better in their language, not just in speaking, but in writing and reading. So, so thank you so much for listening to me and looking forward to this class.